Parents have the responsibility of loving and teaching their children. We've talked about that a lot. And we can't be casual about it. We have to give it all our attention. One of the aspects of teaching children is to help them tell the truth about themselves. And we need to know that they can be very slippery about it. Instead of really listening to you and really telling the truth about themselves, often they only appear to listen and seem to be telling the truth. Like most people, they just tend to do the least possible, just like water finds the easiest course. They're human. Let's talk about an example. During the week, Natalie asked her mother to go to her friend Mia's birthday party on Saturday, and Mom agreed to take her if she would be ready by exactly 10 a.m. Not tough. This isn't 6 in the morning. Mom had some other things to do. And she said, I'll take you if you're ready in the car at 10 a.m. And she already taught the children on many occasions, 10 really means 9:55. Mom said she'd be leaving the driveway, though, at exactly 10, not 10 plus 10 seconds, to get to the party on time, whether her daughter, Natalie, was ready or not. Natalie said, no problem. And you would think there wouldn't be, not at 10. That's pretty late. Mom knew that Natalie had agreed to bring cupcakes to the party. And Mom knew how long that task, the cupcakes, would take because she'd done it many times herself. Mom had made cupcakes with Natalie several times before too, so she knew that Natalie knew the scope of the job. She knew that it was a big job from beginning to end. Making cupcakes isn't just popping them in the oven. Well, I thought it was just eating them. It's not just popping them in the oven, which apparently only takes about 20 minutes to cook. No, beginning to end, the task is like an hour and 45 minutes. I know, every cupcake maker will give you a different number, but you've got to get out all the utensils, and in many kitchens, they're not in order. Often you have to then clean them before you use them. You have to get out the pans, all the ingredients. You have to mix stuff. You have to bake stuff. You have to cool the cupcakes down before you can ice them. Then you ice them. Then you clean up the kitchen, which is part of making cupcakes. I got that part. At least I've heard that all this is involved, having never done it. I just stick with the eating. Somebody has to eat these things. Mom suggested that Natalie make the cupcakes Friday night. But Natalie said, nah, I want to relax and watch a movie. Mom just smiled. So Natalie watched the movie. She promised that she would get up Saturday morning and get it done. And Mom's already going, she didn't say it out loud. We'll see. Natalie slept in Saturday morning. Not unusual for her, because apparently her alarm clock intermittently doesn't work. Laughable. So she didn't get up till 8:30, 90 minutes before Mom said she'd be leaving. That's when she got up, sat up in bed 90 minutes before the time it was to leave. She was doomed. It was over. She failed the second she woke up. Not failed as a human being, but failed at this task. She was way behind. She would have been 15 minutes behind if she'd woken up completely dressed, done everything else, and just had the cupcakes to make. But she had lots of other things to do. And there are always other things to do. That's why we don't start preparing for a thing exactly that many minutes before it has to be done, because there's always something that comes up. Mom asked Natalie if she would be ready. Sure, her daughter said, at this point at 8:30. Not even concerned. By then it was probably 8:35. Then Natalie sat down and texted a couple of friends, had a nice long shower. This was while the cupcakes should already be in the oven. Picked out the clothes she'd be wearing, watched a YouTube. She started the cupcakes at 9:30. 30 minutes before the car was going to leave. They weren't even in the oven when 9:30 arrived. Natalie began to sense for the first time that she might not make it. So she hurried. But it turns out no matter how you stomp your feet or blow at the oven, you can't make cupcakes bake correctly faster. She still hadn't put on her makeup, gotten together some other things that she would be taking to the party, and at 9:55, Mom just casually mentioned to Natalie that she said, I'll be going to sit and wait in the car. That's what she did routinely at a time that they were preparing to go anywhere. Natalie knew she wasn't even close now to making it, and she began to beg for more time, which had in the past had always worked. She said, well, it won't matter if I'm a little late, which is a lie already because she was going to be a whole lot late. And then she said, I ran out of time. Really? So time was measured differently for you than for everybody else. Then she said, I couldn't find one of the pans. You've heard all these excuses. You've heard the excuses for everything. Mom brilliantly did not respond to the excuses. Hallelujah for Mom. She said at 10 o'clock exactly, either one, I leave, or if you're not in the car, I'll just come back into the house and go back to what I was going to do this morning because I set aside this 10 o'clock leaving time so that I could still get done what I needed to get done. Natalie, of course, didn't make it, and she began to complain that it wasn't fair. Mom said simply, 300 words. That's it. That's all she said. Meaning that Natalie had to write 300 words about what she had learned from this experience, or she could continue protesting, but then the length of the essay would increase, as would the number of subjects she would have to address in the essay. Well, Natalie knew this game because she played before and gotten to 1,000-word essays. So Natalie wrote an essay. Still no cupcakes. And one of the first things she said was this: today, I missed my opportunity to go to Mia's birthday party and sleepover because I didn't manage my time well. Now, most parents would say, well, that's pretty good. She was pretty honest. No, and that's the subject of this answer. That initial sentence has the appearance of learning. But as parents, we must be aware that children have a habit of appearing to listen or respond just enough to fool the parents. They play all day long with that line between excellence or truth and mediocrity or half-truth. All day long they do that. They're just exploring their world, see what they can get away with. They're not really testing you. They're just taking the path of least resistance, just like every fluid does, water or gas or anything else. When they fool us, they think they got away with something, but actually they do themselves a disservice. Because imagine this continuing. Imagine an engineering professor who let his students do their work pretty good. Well, you'd have bridges and buildings falling, and if you happen to be driving on the bridge or sitting in the building, not a comedy routine. Or a surgery professor, I was a surgery professor, who says to a student who's doing something, that's not too bad, that's pretty good, when the truth is that such a level of performance, if continued, would end up really badly on many occasions. See, the problem is that mediocrity sometimes is good enough. Yeah, but a lot of times it's not. That's why excellence has to be the standard. That's why zero tolerance has to be a standard. So it's time to introduce to her and everybody else the difference between, now listen to the difference. A, Natalie said, I didn't manage my time well. She's going to learn nothing from that. What's not well? What does that mean? And the difference between that and B, the alternative she didn't choose. I did a really terrible job of managing my time, starting last night. Actually, I didn't manage my time at all. I just did what I felt like, and I hoped that somehow time would adjust itself to me. And I hoped that at the end, when I ran out of time, as though time, consciously went somewhere, I'd be rescued from my lack of responsibility. So A, well, I didn't do it well. To B, I really, really made a mess of this. I was irresponsible from top to bottom. For a 24-hour period, I was irresponsible. That's why I now have no time left, as opposed to time ran out, which is way too passive. And the truth is that most parents do rescue their children from their mistakes. They take their homework to school when a kid's left it at home. They do jobs around the house for them because it would be faster to just do them than nag this child again. They help them do their homework at the last minute. Now, I emphasize last minute because if a child asks for help along the way, that's helping. My children tried this only a couple of times. Dad, would you help me write this essay? I'd say, so when was it assigned? Well means at least a couple of weeks. If they go, well, that means 3 to 6 weeks. So 3 weeks ago, they got the assignment. When's it due? Well, I already know the answer to that. Tomorrow. How much of it have you written? None. I said, well, then I won't help you. You do the rough draft. I'll help you edit it. I will help you along the way, but I won't do your assignment for you because the teacher didn't send the assignment to me. Parents do jobs for kids. They help them get a job done that belongs to the child so the child can learn responsibility. They sit and avoid confrontations when two kids are fighting. Parents don't do a very good job of loving and teaching. We let stuff go, and we can't afford to do that. Our children can't afford for us to do that. Every time we fail to teach a child what they need to know, we are teaching them how to be irresponsible or confused or both. By not teaching, we're still teaching. We're just teaching wrong principles. Natalie said she didn't manage her time well. Let's say arbitrarily that well, doing a job well, is about 8 on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being perfect. Natalie's performance, in reality, was about a 1. I mean, she didn't make it to the door. She didn't go to the party. She didn't finish the cupcakes. She didn't finish cleaning up the kitchen by the prescribed time. 1 is a kindness. So well is 8. Natalie did a 1. Calling a 1 not well, meaning 1 is not 8, is a vast understatement. And it's very far from the truth. We have to understand that as parents. So what do? Mom points out that one sentence, and this is an instruction I'm giving, so I'm speaking to Mom. So point out that one sentence that Natalie wrote, well, I didn't manage my time well, and have her rewrite it until she can name all the irresponsible things she did, which we've named in this conversation. I've rewatch the answer and you'll see all the things that she has to have in her essay. Why does that matter? Why not just let it go? I mean, it's such a small thing. I didn't do it well. Because Natalie won't learn how far from responsible she was if she just calls it not great or not well. It's a self-deception. It may appear subtle, but it's only because we've gotten used to it. It's not subtle. The difference between 1 and 8 isn't subtle. The difference between a car having 1 tire and 4 tires isn't subtle. Well, I didn't do a great job of putting tires on the car when you only put on 1. Oh, that's not well. That's complete failure. I hear people, including adults, say this a lot. Versions of what Natalie said. They'll say, well, I wasn't perfect, often referring to their parenting job, by the way, or I could have done better. In other words, we make our performance sound marginal. Now see, if Natalie performed at a 7 and well was 8, she could say not well. You don't get to say not well at 1. When the truth is, I didn't even think about what I was doing. This would be Natalie speaking. I didn't care about anybody but myself. I didn't even think of long-term consequences to me or others. I didn't pay attention at all to doing it right. That would also apply to most adults who say, well, I didn't do it perfectly, because adults do this to their employers and other people all the time. We owe our children our best efforts. We can't afford to do a 1 when well is 8. Notice there's no implication here that anybody should be perfect. But performing below an 8 as a parent just confuses children to death, literally. We're teaching them how to live in the world. We're teaching them how to be responsible and loving and happy. And if we're satisfied with half explanations or excuses, we doom them to live like that for the rest of their lives. They'll do badly in school, in their careers, and in their relationships. We, as parents, must do better. And we can. And you're learning. We're getting there.